Can you even imagine owning a dress so heavy with gold and jewels you could barely move? Or how about having so many clothes that you needed, whole teams of people just to manage them? Well, for some medieval queens, this wasn't a dream, it was just another Tuesday. We're talking about wardrobes that cost more than a noble's entire estate, dresses literally woven with threads of pure gold, and fur trims made from thousands of tiny precious animal pelts. Get ready, because the sheer amount of bling and fabric these royal ladies rocked will blow your mind. One queen's surviving accounts show she ordered over 70 complete outfits in just a few months. Another's single ceremonial robe was valued at more than a skilled craftsman would earn in decades of hard labor. And the colors, dyes so rare and incredibly expensive that wearing them was like walking around draped in liquid treasure, a statement louder than any words. These weren't just clothes. They were declarations of power, wealth, and unbelievable status. Number 5. Philippa of Hainault, the queen whose wardrobe was a kingdom's pride. Picture this. It's the 14th century, and England is feeling pretty good about itself, at least for a while. King Edward III is on the throne, and his queen, Philippa of Hainault, isn't just any queen. She's a beloved figure, and her wardrobe. Oh, it was something else, a shining example of royal magnificence that everyone agreed was totally fitting for a queen of her stature. We know this because, luckily for us nosy history buffs, some of her household accounts survived. And let me tell you, those old parchments paint a picture of serious spending on looking fabulous. Philippa wasn't just buying a new dress for a special occasion. No. There were regular, constant orders for new clothes. She needed gowns for grand state events. You know, the kind where you have to look like you own the world. Then there were her everyday royal ensembles, still way grander than anything a commoner would ever see, let alone wear. She also had special outfits for things like hunting, which was a big deal for royals, and of course somber, rich garments for periods of mourning. Even her children, the royal princes and princesses, were decked out in the finest. Imagine the royal nursery probably bursting with tiny velvet robes and miniature fur-lined cloaks. Where did all these amazing fabrics come from? Well, Philippa had connections. Being from Hainault, which was part of the Low Countries, she had easy access to the superfine wools from Flanders. English wool was good, but Flemish wool was chef's kiss for luxury garments. And then there was silk. We're talking shimmering silks imported all the way from Italy, and even further east from places that sounded like myths to most people back then. Think rich damasks with woven patterns, sumptuous velvets that begged to be touched, and lustrous satins. These weren't cheap local materials. These were the international jet-set fabrics of their day. And the fur. Oh, the fur. Medieval royals loved their fur. Philippa was no exception. Ermine, that iconic white fur with the little black tails, was a must-have for royalty, a symbol of purity and status. To make one ermine-lined mantle, you'd need hundreds of those little stoats. Then there was vair, a type of squirrel fur, often arranged in a distinctive blue, gray, and white pattern. It was so popular that patterns imitating it were painted and woven. Her wardrobe would have been heavy with these luxurious, warm, and incredibly expensive linings and trimmings. Let's not forget her coronation robes. Can you imagine the sheer splendor? These would have been crafted from the most expensive cloth of gold or silver, heavily embroidered and possibly encrusted with jewels. A queen's coronation was a massive statement, and her dress was a key part of that message. I am here, I am magnificent, and I am your queen. Jewelry was naturally a big part of her look. Records show purchases of pearls, which were wildly valuable, and various precious gemstones. These wouldn't just be for necklaces and rings. Jewels were sewn directly onto clothing, catching the light with every movement, and embroidery. This was the era of opus anglicanum, English embroidery, so fine and artistic that it was famous all over Europe. Philippa's gowns would have featured this exquisite needlework, perhaps with floral patterns, religious scenes, or even heraldic symbols showing off her royal lineage and her marriage. Her wardrobe wasn't just personal vanity. It was a reflection of King Edward III's court, which was renowned for its chivalry, its tournaments, and its grandeur. Edward wanted to project an image of power and magnificence, and his queen's appearance was a crucial part of that. Because Philippa was generally a popular and respected queen, often seen as kind and compassionate, her expenditure on clothes wasn't usually criticized like it was for some other queens. Instead, it was often viewed as appropriate a way of upholding the dignity and splendor of the English crown. She was in many ways dressing the part of the perfect medieval queen, and doing it with serious style and a budget to match. Every thread, every jewel, every fur pelt was a testament to her status and the wealth of the kingdom she represented. Number 4. Anne of Bohemia, the trendsetter, who changed English fashion forever. All right, let's zip over to late 14th century England, a time of high fashion and even higher headdresses. King Richard II was on the throne, a king known for his refined, some might say extravagant tastes in pretty much everything, especially clothes. And his queen, Anne of Bohemia, who arrived from Central Europe, didn't just fit into this glitzy court. She helped set its trends. Seriously, this queen had an impact on English fashion that people were still talking about long after she was gone. One of the biggest things Anne is remembered for fashion-wise is popularizing the side saddle for women in England. Before this, ladies often rode astride like men, or in a more precarious, less elegant side-facing position. Anne is widely credited with making the more dignified and fashionable side saddle the way to go for noble women. Imagine the stir this caused. A new way to ride. A new way to look elegant, even on horseback. It was a practical innovation, but also a fashionable one. But that wasn't all. Anne's arrival is also linked to some of the more out-there fashion statements of the time, particularly those incredible headdresses. We're talking about the beginnings of what would later become the towering hennin. While the really tall, pointy cone hats came a bit later, Anne's era saw women's headdresses becoming more elaborate, wider, and more decorated. Think padded rolls, intricate veils, jeweled nets, styles that were new and exciting and possibly a bit shocking to the more conservative folks. She and her Bohemian entourage brought a fresh wave of European styles to the English court. Richard II's court was a fashion hotbed. Seriously, it was like medieval Paris, Fashion Week every day. They loved rich fabrics, and Anne's wardrobe would have been stuffed with them. Velvet so plush you could lose your hand in them, silks that shimmered with every step, and the ultimate luxury, cloth of gold, actual fabric, woven with threads of real gold. These weren't just plain colors either. They were dyed in deep, vibrant hues. And the embroidery. Oh, the embroidery was on another level. This was a time of personal badges and livery. King Richard's personal symbol was the white hart, a male deer, and you can bet that symbol, along with other heraldic designs, was lavishly embroidered onto his and Anne's garments, using gold and silver thread and colorful silks. Anne was known for her gentle nature and was well liked, earning her the nickname Good Queen Anne. When she died young from the plague, Richard was absolutely devastated. He was so grief-stricken that he reportedly ordered the royal manor at Sheen, where she passed away, to be completely demolished. Nothing was to remain of the place where he lost her. Her funeral was an incredibly lavish affair, as befitted a beloved queen. Her funeral effigy in Westminster Abbey, which still exists, gives us a glimpse of the royal style of the time, with its elegant flowing robes. Accounts for her funeral also list vast quantities of expensive black cloth and other rich materials, indicating the scale of mourning and the importance of her status even in death. Her Bohemian background likely brought new influences. Different cuts, different styles of ornamentation, perhaps different ways of wearing jewels or arranging her hair. The English court was already pretty flamboyant, but Anne and her retinue would have added another layer of international chic. While specific surviving garments are virtually non-existent from this far back, the chronicles and art of the period paint a clear picture. Queen Anne was a fashion plate. She wasn't just wearing clothes, she was making statements, introducing new ideas, and helping to shape the very look of late medieval English nobility. Her legacy wasn't just in her kindness, but also in the sweep of a skirt, the tilt of a headdress, and the elegant way a queen could now ride her horse. Number 3. Eleanor of Aquitaine, the twice queen who dazzled 2 nations. Hold on to your hats, because we're talking about a true medieval superstar, Eleanor of Aquitaine. This woman wasn't just a queen, she was a force of nature. Duchess of Aquitaine in her own right, which was a massive deal. She was Queen of France first, then Queen of England. She lived an incredibly long and eventful life, rubbing shoulders with some of the most powerful people of the 12th century. And trust me, her wardrobe was as epic as her life story. When Eleanor first burst onto the scene, marrying Louis VII of France, she brought a whole different vibe from her native Aquitaine in southern France. Aquitaine was known for its culture of troubadours, courtly love, and a more refined, luxurious lifestyle than the somewhat more austere northern courts like Paris. So, imagine young Eleanor arriving, probably dressed in fashions that made the northern ladies gasp. We're talking more vibrant colors, lighter, more flowing silks, fabrics better suited to the sunnier climes of the south. Her style would have been a breath of fresh, fashionable air. Eleanor was a huge patron of the arts, especially poetry and music. The troubadours she championed sang songs of chivalry, romance, and you guessed it, the beauty and elegance of noble ladies. And a queen known for her beauty and power would naturally be at the forefront of this. Her clothing would have been part of this romantic, idealized image. Think long, graceful gowns that emphasized the figure, perhaps with elaborate belts and beautiful draping. She wasn't afraid of color. Medieval dyes could produce surprisingly bright shades for those who could afford them, and Eleanor could definitely afford them. Then there was the jewelry. Oh, the bling. As a great heiress, and then a queen twice over, Eleanor would have had access to incredible jewels, gold, silver, precious gems from far-off lands. These wouldn't just be necklaces and rings, but also clasps for her mantles, decorations for her belts, and ornaments woven into her hair or headdresses. Perfumes, too, were part of the package. The wealthiest nobles imported exotic scents from the East. Another layer of luxury to set them apart. And get this, Eleanor even went on crusade. Can you picture it? A queen, traveling across Europe and the Mediterranean to the Holy Land. This journey would have exposed her to even more incredible luxuries from the Byzantine Empire and the Middle East. Think stunning silks, intricate patterns, and perhaps even new ideas for fashion. Her wardrobe wasn't static. It would have evolved with her experiences and her travels. Later in life, as Queen of England, married to Henry II, and mother to kings like Richard the Lionheart and John, Eleanor remained a powerhouse. Even when she was acting as regent while Richard was off on his own crusade or held captive, her appearance would have been crucial. She needed to project royal authority, stability, and wealth. Her robes of state would have been magnificent, made from the richest materials available, possibly including furs like ermine and rich velvets, all designed to impress and command respect. Even in her old age, when she retired to Fontevraud Abbey, she was still Eleanor of Aquitaine. Her tomb effigy there, though stylized, shows her in regal attire, reading a book, a testament to her intelligence and her enduring status. Throughout her long life, through political turmoil, wars, and personal dramas, Eleanor's wardrobe was more than just clothing. It was a statement of her immense personal power, her vast wealth as Duchess of Aquitaine, and her unshakable royal dignity as Queen of two of Europe's most important kingdoms. She didn't just wear clothes, she wore her legacy. Her fashion sense, like her personality, was legendary, influencing courts and leaving an indelible mark on the image of medieval queenship. Number 2. Isabella of France, the she-wolf whose silks were as sharp as her politics. All right, let's dive into the early 14th century and meet Isabella of France, Queen of England, wife of the ill-fated Edward II. She was famously beautiful, dubbed Isabella the Fair, but don't let that fool you. She was also incredibly shrewd, politically ambitious, and eventually earned the much fiercer nickname, the She-Wolf of France, for her role in deposing her own husband, and guess what? Her wardrobe was just as dramatic and impressive as her life. Luckily for us, her detailed household and wardrobe accounts have survived, and they are an absolute goldmine of information about what a medieval queen really wore and how much it cost. These accounts are like a medieval shopping list on steroids. We're talking page after page of entries for fabrics, garments, and accessories. The sheer quantity of silk mentioned is mind-boggling. Bolts and bolts of it in every color and type imaginable. Rich velvets, shimmering satins, patterned damasks, and the ultra-luxurious cloth of gold and cloth of silver. These weren't just for one or two special dresses. Isabella had an enormous number of gowns, kirtles, a type of tunic dress, mantles, capes, hoods, and even luxurious nightgowns and robes for lounging in her private chambers, and the furs. Oh, the medieval love affair with fur was in full swing. Isabella's accounts list staggering amounts of ermine. For one single garment, hundreds upon hundreds of tiny ermine pelts would be needed, each one carefully stitched together to create a lining or trim that screamed royalty. Miniver, a prized squirrel fur, sable, and other expensive furs were also ordered in huge quantities. Imagine the weight and warmth of these fur-lined cloaks and gowns, not to mention the immense cost. The details are incredible. We see entries for specific trimmings, ounces and ounces of gold and silver thread for embroidery, thousands of pearls to be sewn onto dresses and headdresses, and purchases of precious gemstones. She had garments specifically for different seasons and occasions. There were lighter silks for summer, heavy velvets and furs for winter, special robes for feasts and state ceremonies, and more casual, by royal standards anyway, attire for everyday wear. Her wardrobe was also a very clear statement of her lineage and status. As the daughter of the powerful King Philip IV of France, one of Europe's richest and most influential monarchs, Isabella came to England with an expectation of a certain level of splendor. Her clothing was a constant reminder of her French royal blood and the power of her family. Even when her marriage to Edward II was falling apart and political tensions were high, her expenditure on her appearance didn't seem to slow down. Looking magnificent was part of being royal, part of projecting power and authority, even when that power was being challenged. The accounts list specific colors too. Scarlet dyed with expensive kermes insects was a top-tier luxury color. Deep blues, vibrant greens, rich purples Marie, all requiring costly and complex dyeing processes. These weren't the dull browns and grays of the peasantry. These were the colors of the elite. And who made all these fabulous clothes? Isabella had her own team of tailors, embroiderers, and other craftspeople dedicated to maintaining and expanding her wardrobe. New outfits were constantly being commissioned. Surviving records show that in one period of just over a year, from June 1311 to July 1312, she acquired more than 70 new sets of robes. 70? Can you even fathom that? That's more than one new high-end outfit every week. Her shoes were custom-made, often from fine leather or even silk. She had gloves, elaborate belts with jeweled buckles, and all sorts of veils and headdresses. Every single element of her appearance was carefully considered and crafted from the best materials money could buy. Isabella of France's wardrobe wasn't just about looking pretty. It was a weapon in her arsenal, a tool of diplomacy, a symbol of her royal status, and a reflection of her formidable personality. It was in every sense fit for a queen who would go on to change the course of English history. Number 1. Isabeau of Bavaria, the queen, whose gowns were a national scandal. And now, for the queen whose wardrobe extravagance became the stuff of legend, and not always in a good way, Isabeau of Bavaria, Queen of France at the turn of the 15th century. She was married to King Charles VI, who unfortunately suffered from increasingly severe bouts of mental illness, leaving the kingdom in a precarious state. Amidst this turmoil, war with England, the 100 Years' War, was raging, and immense suffering among the common people. Queen Isabeau's reported spending on fashion became a major source of scandal and outrage. Chroniclers of the time did not hold back in their criticism. Isabeau was at the forefront of some of the most extreme fashions of the late medieval period. We're talking about the houppelande, a voluminous outer gown that could be incredibly elaborate. Isabeau's houppelans were famous for their ridiculously long trailing sleeves. So long, in fact, that they often had to be knotted up just to allow her to walk. These sleeves consumed vast quantities of incredibly expensive fabric. Imagine yards and yards of velvet or gold brocade just for the sleeves of one dress. And then there were the headdresses. Oh, those headdresses! This was the era when the hennin, the tall, conical or steeple-shaped hat with a veil tentaming from the top, was becoming popular, along with other massive elaborate headpieces like the great butterfly headdress, which involved wired gauze creating wing-like structures. Isabeau was said to have embraced these extreme styles with gusto. There are even stories, possibly exaggerated but reflecting contemporary perceptions, that doorways in palaces had to be widened to accommodate her enormous headdresses and the wide padded shoulders of her gowns. Whether literally true or not, it paints a picture of fashion taken to its absolute limits. The materials she used were, by all accounts, the most luxurious and expensive imaginable. Gold brocades so heavy they were difficult to wear, velvets embroidered with pearls until they shimmered like a treasure chest, silks from the furthest reaches of the known world. Jewels weren't just worn as accessories, they were encrusted onto the fabric of her gowns themselves. Her personal motto, Je le tiens, meaning I hold it or I possess it, was reportedly embroidered onto many of her garments, a rather bold statement given the kingdom's financial woes. Chroniclers, especially those allied with her political enemies, and there were many, given the fractured state of French politics, accused her of draining the royal treasury to fund her insatiable appetite for fashion. While it's true that all royals spent lavishly on clothes as a display of power, Isabeau's spending was seen as particularly egregious because of the context. A mad king, a country at war, and widespread poverty. The contrast between her glittering, jewel-laden appearance and the suffering of the French populace was stark and fueled immense resentment. She was a foreign queen from Bavaria, as her name suggests, which often made royal consorts targets for criticism, and her perceived extravagance made her an easy scapegoat for the kingdom's problems. Every new gown, every fantastical headdress, was seen by some as another insult to the struggling people of France. It wasn't just the cost of the materials, but the sheer volume of clothes, the constant demand for new styles, and the perception that her personal adornment took precedence over the needs of the kingdom. While it's hard to separate fact from politically motivated slander entirely, the historical record, including critical contemporary accounts, strongly suggests that Isabeau of Bavaria's wardrobe was indeed exceptionally opulent, even by the standards of medieval royalty. She lived in a bubble of extreme luxury, and her clothing was its most visible manifestation. Her gowns heavy with gold and precious stones, and her towering headdresses became symbols not just of royal splendor, but also, for many, of royal indifference and excess during one of France's darkest periods. Her wardrobe wasn't just fashion, it was a flashpoint, a dazzling, controversial display that has echoed down the centuries.